Hey, what's going on, everybody? David Noe with Speak Easy HR, presented by Payroll Partners. It is October 7th, which is hard to believe. I'm at episode 10 with this podcast, and I have a great guest today, Jamie Bierman from HR Elements. Welcome, Jamie. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am the host, producer, editor of this whole thing, and you are with HR Partners or HR Elements. I'm sorry. So if you are local to Cincinnati, you might have heard of HR Elements, but if you want to just quickly kind of give your background and kind of introduce yourself a little bit, we'll go from there.
Absolutely. Like David said, locally, HR Elements is one of the premier providers of outsourced or fractional HR management, attraction and engagement services, as well as employee development. So we really specialize in everything soup to nuts throughout the employee life cycle. And we work primarily as an HR business partner to private or family businesses around greater Cincinnati, but we also can provide support remotely or in person in some cities around the United States. And let's see, I was our fifth employee at HR Elements,
Oh,
and
wow.
I am getting ready to celebrate my seventh anniversary with the organization, and it has just flown by. It's
Very
been an
cool.
awesome ride. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you've gone through COVID with them and all of the different changes
Yeah.
amongst the world of HR. So, and you've been doing HR for a while, what, 15 plus years, 17 years?
Yeah, actually about 20. Shh, don't tell
Oh,
them. Yeah,
no.
20 years. I studied HR management and finance at Miami University
Okay.
and was able to get a position in HR right out of school, which it was. Our grad class was kind of small for HR management. They actually discontinued the major temporarily after that. And
Okay.
then they did bring it back a few short years later, but was able to get a position in a um, national printer supply organization. They were called
Okay.
Stamp Register in
Yeah.
Dayton. And I started, gosh, I graduated on a Saturday and I think I started my job on Wednesday. So
Jeez.
yeah,
Busy.
it was awesome though.
Very cool.
Mhm.
Well, good. We are live on LinkedIn and YouTube. So for those joining, definitely let us know where you are watching from. It looks like I've got somebody, Will Roberts from Saka, who is he is telling you go Red Hawks.
Yeah,
So there you go.
love
So
and
yeah,
honor.
if anybody's watching, obviously we want to have some engagement. So if you have questions along the way, I'll be checking the chat just to see if anybody is bringing up questions or comments about our topic, which we'll get to in a little bit. But the world famous envelope icebreaker game is going to be coming up soon. So you have the questions that I did send you, Jamie. So you will have those come up in a minute. If I'm just going to get to one thing before we get there, and I've got a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
So, Speakeasy HR is presented by Payroll Partners. If this will load, that would be great. There we Whoa, it started way late. Let me try it again. Here we go. Um, do you have a Porky payroll process, or do you know somebody that does? Is your current provider hogging your time or money? It might be time to contact our awesome team at Payroll Partners. You can learn more at payrollpartners.net. And for those of you who were at SHRM in Ohio, we had these awesome pigs that were HR SHRM conference only. So these are limited edition. This is falling behind the cow. And before I was at Payroll Partners, we had, I think, horses. And so every year we have a different animal. So we do have some of these awesome pigs, but not many left. I got one of the last few for my show. So, all right. So, envelope icebreaker game. Here we go. So, I've got the 15 questions here. So, 1 through 15. Um, you get to pick the number. We might be doing a couple if you would like to do more.
Sure.
So I've got 1 through 15. You got a number you want to throw out there?
My favorite number is 5, so I'll go with that.
5. Okay. Yeah, that's a different number than most in the last few episodes. So number 5. I don't remember what's in here. I know the questions. I just don't know what I put in this one. Okay, what's your favorite tradition or holiday?
Ooh,
Favorite tradition or holiday?
okay. So my favorite, kind of two. One of my favorite holidays is Thanksgiving. I love
Okay.
food,
Love food.
and
Okay.
we shuffle back and forth every other year between hosting at my house or
Okay.
hosting at my mom and dad's.
Okay.
So, but usually I cook with my mother,
Okay.
regardless of where we are. But it's just an easy. Our table's always super fancy. It's the one time a year I use my china,
Yeah.
and it actually like setting the table, making sure it looks pretty. My son and I
Mhm.
do it together every year. Love
Yeah.
that. But really, we play games. I wake up, parade, food prep,
Yeah.
and then we just absolutely play games all day, and it's intense. Like it
Yeah.
could be shuffleboard, it could be Mexican train. Kids are obsessed with categories.
Okay.
So always play that. And then we finish the evening, usually after dessert, with a game of take advantage of the person sitting next to you. And that is the game that we named for our children, but it is really screw your neighbor. But we take advantage of the person sitting next to us.
Wow.
So
That's very
that is
good.
my holiday.
That is very good. We've got another one that's joining us from Cincinnati,
Yeah.
Warren Grove.
Warren is the newest member of Team HRE.
All right.
Hey,
Well, welcome,
today.
Warren.
Yeah.
Welcome, Warren.
Yes,
Warren.
Warren.
Welcome, Warren. That was a mouthful. All right. Well, one more number. One more number.
I'll go number 15.
Okay. 15. 15 hasn't been pulled lately either. Okay. What was your favorite band growing up?
Okay.
Ooh.
Growing up, so really, this would have been elementary-ish. Massive Dave Matthews Band fan.
Okay.
I went to all the concerts when Polaris Amphitheater existed in Columbus,
Yeah.
which is where I grew up. I would always go both nights. Obviously, that was in high school, but I was one of those CD club members when I was young, and so I had like all the CDs, listened to all of them, was a massive fan.
That's
Uh,
awesome.
I have fallen a little bit off the DMB bandwagon, but
Yeah.
the one band that I still love is Fleetwood Mac.
Oh, yeah.
Stevie Nicks, love her.
Yep. Yeah. I'm a yacht rock radio fan. If you are on Sirius XM, I listen to that. My kids will like know the songs on there, and I'll catch them singing them in the shower. Like it's hilarious. So definitely Fleetwood Mac's on there, Stevie
Oh
Nicks.
yeah. Oh yeah.
Um, yeah. So now this is kind of a bonus question. It's not in here, but
Okay.
going back to the first few jobs you had, what was the first job you had taxes taken out?
Okay, so this is atypical than
Okay.
what most people would ever get taxed for, but
Okay.
it was babysitting a family in my neighborhood.
Okay.
I babysat their kids. Gosh, let's see. It was probably the summer after eighth grade was the first time I started babysitting every single day. And
Okay.
they needed my social security number. And my parents were like, that doesn't seem legitimate. Why is that? And so we had the conversation. It was because it was for taxes. So I had to pay taxes on my babysitting.
Okay.
Should
Yeah,
have
you
asked
don't hear
for
that.
a
You don't
raise.
hear that much.
No.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But
Very
the
good.
kids are all like married now. They're
Right.
having their own children now.
Yeah.
Crazy to see that.
Yeah, you don't hear that much, but
Yeah.
yeah, very
Mhm.
cool. All right. Well, I want to jump into this topic because as you and I are in HR and we've been in HR
Mhm.
for a while, this is one that, definitely looking at uh why an HR partner, and that's your topic. So the top shelf topic. And I came to you just like all the other guests that I talked, really finding out something that they're passionate about, in the moment right now in their world of business and HR. So you brought why an HR partner and doing what you have been doing for quite some time now in different roles. You've been with furniture companies and consultants now. And, you know, going into that, why did you choose this topic for today?
Yeah, and that's a great question. So I think there is a really big difference between being in HR and being an HR partner.
Yeah.
Yeah, is it words? Absolutely. But I think that those of us who really are serious about our practice and making sure that we're aligning our goals with our clients, whether that be a manager within the same business that you work at
Yeah.
or a client, like HR Element serves our clients at different organizations. Understanding the end game and being there to support as a partner, I think really changes the approach. I've had the opportunity, in my different years of experience working at businesses where HR was that, police department. You didn't want to talk to HR. You didn't want to be near those HR women in the lunchroom, right? Because they are going to tell on you and they're out to get you, versus roles where I was able to be a strategic member of a leadership team. I was in the IT department because I
Yep.
was their HR partner. I was able to work with all of our sales leaders across the country because I was their HR partner. Same
Yep.
thing with our customer service. And when I first heard the topic of, an HR partner, it was in 2008. And there was an article, I think, in Sherm about what is this and really having HR professionals with a seat at the table.
Yep.
And it really was that, being able to understand what are the goals, talking about top line revenue, understanding the barriers to market entry, barriers to sales from a business unit leader's perspective, really enabled me to survey the market from an HR perspective so much better.
Yeah.
So I think it's
Do,
important.
do you remember the swine flu and when people were kind of going nuts trying to get that was back in like 29 or 2009, maybe
Yes.
2008, something like that? Yeah, I remember leaving work, going and getting the vaccine or whatever that was out there for the swine flu. I just had my first child a couple months before that, whatever. And then we had to go through COVID. So like I feel and you might feel the same way, but going through COVID and how HR professionals and how people in HR were viewed pre-COVID and post-COVID, I feel like for a lot of people might have changed the perception of them between the industries and amongst what had to be done because there was a lot that had to be done and it was things that we had to keep up with and figure out the best way to roll out the communication, the workflow, the processes for people to continue to work, to
Mhm.
lay them off, help them with unemployment, bring them back to work, like a reduction in force, like all of these things within HR had to be done. Yes, we had teachers working from home, we had people trying to figure out how they're going to support their family because they got laid off. And then at the middle of all of this was like HR. I felt like
Mhm.
for a lot of businesses. And we still have to deal with some of those things, right? Like remote work, hybrid work environments, like how to retain top talent and all of the things that come amongst the world of HR. And still it's not looked at as like a revenue generator to some people, right?
Yeah.
It's more like, oh, you create the policies and then you enforce the policies and you hire people, but you also fire people. And so it's like when I look back at the last 15 years of working in HR and all the different roles that I had, it was also different in each industry, each company size. So like it is still very specific to the industry and how HR is viewed within that organization. And I think for the work that you do, you probably can see quickly within an organization like where they view HR,
Absolutely. And it's
right?
actually it's a question that we typically ask our clients as we're starting that relationship because we want to understand a few different things. Is it, have you ever had an HR professional, an HR manager? What do your employees think about that? How are your employees currently engaging with their, HR person internally, so that we can really cultivate that specific approach for our client to make sure we don't, step on a landmine by accident, but also to create that healthy understanding of really why does HR exist within an organization,
Right.
and what are we here to do? And it was it was a while ago, more than 10 years ago, where I was starting a position, and I was, taking over HR from somebody who maybe didn't do the best of jobs. And I was asked, hey, do you want to rebrand it? Do you want to call it something different? We see all these different names for HR.
Yeah.
Is it organizational effectiveness? Is it human capital? Is it talent management?
Yep.
And, I don't know if this was the right decision, but I just said, what? People know what in your company, the business that we're in, people know what HR means, and it is human resources. I'm going to just keep it that way, but I'm going to work my tail off to rebrand it by the things that we do and actually trying to provide resources to managers, to employees,
Yep.
with the goal. And one of my early jobs, when I was still working in this business services, printing, promotional products, one of my leaders said, our purpose here is connecting people to performance, process, and technology, through
Yep.
technology. And that was really my first position as an HR business partner. And that really was so true. And that really was our goal at the end. Yes, we're not revenue generating. However, if we don't have people, processes, technology that drive effective performance, probably don't have great revenue.
Right.
So by
And
default, more important.
yeah, and I think technology and AI will make our lives easier to some
Mhm,
extent, depending on what you have to do, whether it's create presentations or reports or something that's going to generate data and whatever. But like you still will have the people relying on HR professionals
mhm,
like yourself, myself, to figure out the best way to lead a company, to lead a organization, departments, to continue to improve, to find the right people to hire. So there's just so many things within that still, like you said, there's the human element that, we are still doing the human element service side from what we do as a business in the technology of payroll and HR. It's, super important to have that kind of mindset. So it's
mhm.
still like having that as a service strategy, but there's still challenges. There's still people that are trying to manage that have never been a manager. There are people that are in a peer-to-peer situation, then they get promoted because companies like to hire from within.
Yeah,
So again, it's like if you look at a client and it's also like, when do you hire internal HR? When do
yeah,
you still keep it as a consultant based? Because you've got different organizations, PEOs, you've got consultant groups, you've got one-off HR projects. I see a lot of it with the training development, right?
mhm,
Most companies don't have an internal trainer. Some do, but if you have a manager group of 15 individuals that manage people, how are you training them? How are you helping
right,
them develop their skills as a leader?
yeah,
You're probably not going to have the HR person train them,
yeah.
you know?
I'm glad that you said that, because there's, I think, some misconceptions in the world, the business world, the marketplace,
Yeah.
about what really is HR. And so HR is not, or at least HR elements, HR. We are not your party planners. We are not the police. Um, we are a business advisor, and we tailor our approach specifically for every single client based on what they've got going on and what their goals are.
Yep.
Everybody is different, and we recognize and celebrate that, because it's fun for us to go in and partner with all of these different businesses, and employees. But also within the organization, HR has a lot of different places. Sometimes payroll is in HR. I don't, I've done payroll once, that because I grew up where it always was part of accounting.
Right.
Um, but I had to understand checks and balances were really important. So if an
Yep.
employee had a question about their payroll check, they were probably going to call me to ask, right? So I had to really understand and know my partners there in payroll really well, because
Right.
the data that they used to run payroll was really based off of an HR system. Same thing with like recruitment. A lot of times people think that HR managers, HR business partners are recruiters.
Right.
In some businesses, we might have to be because we run a nimble department of one, but that's a lot of sales. That's a huge piece of finding, talent and selling why your organization is the best. So
Yep.
there's different portions of a talent acquisition process where it's probably not HR. It's somebody who is great about, that acquisition, finding the people, selling them on the opportunity, getting them interested in your culture. And then, yeah, HR is absolutely going to be involved in creating a fair, equitable, legal behavioral interview, facilitating an onboarding and orientation program that protects the organization, connects people to culture, gets them engaged and ready for their, first 90 days of work. And then training, you brought that up. It's not something that every HR person can do.
Right.
Understanding that there might be a gap and you need to train, absolutely. But at HR Elements, we recognize that our advisors are not trainers. We have an amazing instructional designer and training facilitator to do that, because that is an art and a science, and she is phenomenal
Yeah.
for that. And it's not always a one fits all solution.
Right. Yeah. And that's, I mean, a lot of industries and a lot of professions are like that. It's very
Mhm.
specific to the industry, company, organization. But when it comes to HR, they interact with every department, for the most part,
Mhm.
right? Like you're dealing with
Absolutely.
all the departments, you're helping them really come with a consistent mindset of how we're going to manage our people on our team, how we're going to develop them, how we're going to retain them, and obviously have to hire people. And as last week's guest that I had on, it was a topic of talent magnetism. Roberta talked about how good there is a good thing that you have turnover. Like you want turnover, not like a crazy amount of it, but you
Right?
do want some turnover. You
Yeah.
don't want the same people there.
No, it provides healthy culture. If you don't ever have new perspectives on things, you're gonna be pretty stagnant. But also, sometimes being able to hire certain people and train them and develop them to a certain point that
Yeah.
they are moving on. Maybe there wasn't a career opportunity for them internally, but gosh, you prepared, and your brand as an employer is going to be so much better based
Right.
off of everybody else who meets that individual and it's like, oh my gosh, you learned
Yeah.
this where?
Right.
So it is. It's you need some steady eddies that are lifers.
Yep.
You need some people that want to continue to grow and develop. That might be in, that might be out.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And you
Mhm.
brought up orientation or onboarding, 90 days, right?
Yeah,
I don't remember the last statistic I saw, but it was pretty high. Like the amount of people that quit a job over the first 90 days.
absolutely. I
It's
don't know a statistic, but
I yeah, it seemed like it was a pretty high amount. I thought it was like 65% of
mhm,
people quit jobs within the first 90 days. But looking at that, it's kind of like, when you're looking at the first 90 days and if you have an internal, HR position and how involved they get within those first 90 days, cuz a lot of companies just do orientation day and they welcome that person, they take them to lunch, they go through the benefits that are offered, they go through the different, technologies that they use and whatever. And then it's like, okay, there you go. Now you're going to go shadow and train with people for the next 90 days.
mhm,
So when you look at the first 3 months at a company and you're working with clients, what are some of the kind of tips and advice that you give clients to really make sure that their onboarding strategy is going to help them keep those new hires? I
Mhm.
mean, they are hiring people, or you're helping them hire people that they feel like is going to fit that position that's open, but you don't know exactly. You don't have a crystal ball that they're going to stay for 5 years. And so it's like, okay, those first 90 days, like how do you really focus on those first 90 days, or what kind of advice would you give companies?
So it starts before the first day of work. It starts with the recruitment process.
Yeah.
So when we are preparing to recruit for a client, we're learning a ton of information because we want to understand what to expect
Yeah.
and what is that onboarding, what is that orientation to potentially prevent any pitfalls that we can see,
Yeah.
prior to that engagement. But really, if you're having high turnover at the beginning, it tells me that you're not recruiting effectively. People are listening to what you say, and if they don't see that that is happening, if you're not accurately describing the job, the culture, what it feels like, then people are going to leave pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Um, because especially in this market, we are always being contacted. We're always seeing different things out there, and you need to be re-recruiting your employees at all times. So if you really think about orientation, yes, it's absolutely that fun compliance of making sure people are filling out all their documentation, that we are verifying their eligibility to work in the United States, that we are getting them paid in the payroll system properly, talking to them about rules, expectations, welcoming them, but we're re-recruiting them
Yeah.
constantly. So that is really your check-ins. I love to have the recruiting team follow back up with that new hire, even at
Right.
the end of the first week. Hey, how'd it go? Let me know. And it's additional touch points. I'm a huge believer in coordinated mentorship programs. So just saying that, you're a mentor, here's who you're learning from. It needs to be a cultivated, curated program where there are understandings of what the roles are to be a mentor, as well as even that mentee, that recipient of the
Right.
training. But what are some things that that mentor should be doing to understand if there are any issues? um, Really, from a HR business partner perspective, that's one additional layer where you're coming in to say, hey, how are things going in in the department? And then being able to circle back, maybe even looking at data from trends that you're capturing in surveys to provide advice and counsel to that business leader. It could be pointing to maybe a need for manager training. It could be some potential issues with just the culture. Are they welcoming?
Right.
Sometimes business leaders might think, like, particularly, let's say, a sales organization, a commission-based sales organization, right? The more competition you have, right, that's going to erode your potential for commission earnings. So if you're working on a sales floor and all of a sudden two new people start, well, are you going to want to help them?
Yeah.
No, probably not. So it's, as that leader, really communicating those expectations and also communicating to the sales team why things are happening.
Yeah.
If new hires aren't being appropriately welcomed, that may be a communication gap at the organization to really communicate, hey, here's what our culture is, here's how we behave. And that's required, that's important. But
Yeah.
people also just might not understanding why certain things are happening. So when you think about an HR business partner, they understand the financial requirements of the business. They understand the P&L. They know what their business partners across the organization, what their goals are, how HR can help
Right.
facilitate that. And really, I think the biggest difference is, when you think of HR as a police officer, this is the rule, here's how we follow it. And yeah, rules compliance, that's always going to be part of this. risk management is something that HR professionals are there to do
Yeah.
to protect the organization. But an HR business partner is there again, advise, to counsel, and then to support the decisions that their business partners make.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes my clients don't always want to do exactly what I recommend, but I'm
Right.
still going to support them because I'm their partner.
Right.
So it's that nice unification.
Yeah. Yeah. I think when you talk about the recruiting process, for me, it really comes down to the questions that you ask in interviews
Mhm.
to figure out why they're looking for a position, what kind of culture have they worked in that they liked, what kind of managers they have worked with, what kind of manager did they feel most empowered by and just engaged with, so that you could figure out, like, do you offer that where you are working, and can you align your job that you're potentially offering that person to what they're looking for.
Mhm.
And so it just kind of takes out some of that guessing game, like, okay, they're looking for XYZ, we have XYZ, we have the
Mhm.
kind of people, we have the kind of culture, we have the compensation benefits. So it really comes down to, like, why is someone looking for a position, and if you can align that, it might really help keep that person, and hopefully help them continue their career with you for a while. So,
Yeah.
um, when you look at 2025 and some of the challenges that you're going to face, or what people in HR are going to face, what are some of those trends or hot topics that you feel like are going to be discussed
Yeah.
next?
Absolutely. So, obviously there's, potential changes, to exempt, you know, status, what are those qualifiers?
Yep.
So always, just staying attuned to legal changes and, obviously using SHRM for that is really important. The other thing that I think is really interesting right now in the market is just recruiting. There still is a significant gap in how many positions are open,
Yep.
employers trying to find that right talent, but
Yep.
also, you know, what's that time to find the perfect person versus the need to fill the job right away.
Yep.
So it's like fighting that potential to fill a job out of a hire out of desperation and just pray
Yep.
that you can, I can train them. They
Yeah.
might have the potential. So, sometimes it's good to take a risk. Sometimes it might be too risky.
Yeah.
So that, continuing to see how that hiring market moves and what those trends are.
Yeah.
Compensation is something that, and really compensation and total rewards is big right now. That I think is absolutely a result of the really competitive market. But what I always encourage employers to really be thinking about once they have ensured that they are offering a competitive and compelling total rewards package, um, is how are they advertising that? How are they talking about it? And um, again, that re recruitment process internally, it's not something that necessarily can just live in one place.
Right.
And you can't not talk about it and expect people to know. So that communication is huge. But then the next few months, obviously, are going to be extremely interesting with the political climate that we're in.
Yep.
And then just seeing, depending on how this election goes, what are those laws and rules and things that are going to trickle into our world as employers next year?
Yep.
Um, we might not even know some of the things that could happen and how we have to be super nimble. Because again, that you referenced COVID earlier, we didn't know that that was going to happen. And then as an
Right.
HR professional, we were juggling safety, we were juggling compliance, we were juggling a lot of emotions,
Yep.
and trying again to make sure that our businesses kept their lights on
Yeah.
and that we were able to pay employees.
Yep.
So it's
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I think, after COVID, and after people maybe went back to a similar work schedule, whether it might be a little bit different now, I
Mhm.
think the mental health space within organizations, and how HR is viewed when it comes to providing that right support, right resources, things that 5 years ago, you didn't really hear people talking about. I mean, you've heard the EAP programs out
Right.
there, but those are very low utilized. People don't really understand them. They feel like HR is going to find out, their manager is going to find out if they call EAP programs, whatever. So,
Mhm.
I think just that human side of an individual when it comes to mental health and things that they are struggling with, whether it's themselves, their family members, the work life balance, trying to get the most out of the staff when people are, dealing with things that you may not know about. And really, how can your organization support your team? So I look at that as people do want to rely and work with their HR team and the people in human resources, because they want to get that right support however it looks. And if we can help them with that and navigate that with them, alongside with them, whether we may not know everything going on, it's
Mhm.
still it's still a way for an employee and a staff member to feel like, hey, my company's got my back, like we are in this together. And so, I think that's going to be still an ongoing thing that people are going to be trying to navigate through as an organization.
Mhm.
And then the generations working together, that is, like we were talking before we came on live, and I was telling you about my oldest is in high school now. And looking 5-8 years into the future, when people in high school and college right now that have dealt with COVID, that have gone through that, whether they're in middle school, high school, college, and they're going into the workforce. And when we came into the workforce, you never heard about people working from home. It was like you go to the office or you go to a job or whatever. Like now it's like companies offer so many different ways to work, whether it's remote, whether it's a flexible schedule. And you have how many generations working together? It's like
5 or 6.
five. Yeah. And the people retiring,
Mhm.
they may not be retiring as early now. So it's like, trying to help a manager who might have people in their 20s, 40s, 50s, 60s working together as a team. Like that is a dynamic situation. And it's easy to manage people that don't need to be managed. But
Right.
when you're managing people that might be 2-3 times the age gap, it's like, how do you do that? So I'm sure that's something that you get asked about.
Mhm.
How do you train somebody to manage those kinds of people? So I think
It's
that's going to be a hot topic.
yeah, it really what we like to talk about often and is that, there's not one management technique, right, that's going to help you be prepared to manage all the generations. But something so important that everybody wants is
Yeah.
to feel heard, to feel seen by their manager, to feel, somewhat understood and supported. And that's really where that psychological safety piece that's really been talked about often more recently
Yeah.
is, do I feel safe to be my authentic self, to ask questions, to say that I need help, to, talk to my manager, my peers. It's really important. And I think that regardless of what your age, if you're a Gen Y, a Gen Z, a millennial, a boomer, um, you want to be seen and you want to be heard. And so to me, that boils down to managers having skills to be able to understand different management techniques to take to communicate with every person.
Yeah.
So we're huge proponents of different assessments to, needs assessments to understand communication styles and how to assign a project to an employee who maybe is super, super tenured, but they've already always done the same thing.
Yep.
What's the right way of coaching and engaging with them versus a brand new employee, but they're so eager? How do you coach them the right way? So it's situational leadership, it's communication styles, and maybe even, with different generations, how can people be partnered or share experiences with one another that help, that, so
Yep.
that you can learn. So apparently I'm a millennial. and a geriatric millennial is what
Yeah.
I read on the internet. And my husband is a Gen X. And then my kids are all different things, but one is, what would that be? A Gen Z, I think.
Yep.
You know, yeah. There are some words that they say, and I'm like, what did they say the other day? Something was vibing, and I was like, what? Huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know how to use some technology. Like my kids have to show me, but
Yep.
I also learned things from my husband who, his first cell phone came in a bag and he had to like plug it into things. So,
Yeah.
we all can offer things and knowledge and experiences that
Yep.
everybody can maybe semi relate to, but also, there's different perspectives because
Yeah.
gosh, when the power goes out or something, those of us who've been through that experience where life didn't revolve on a cell phone, we can work through it a little bit.
Yeah.
My kids get
Yeah.
really mad at me because in the car I say, "Oh, guys, we're gonna play 1995," and they're like, "What does that mean?" And I said, "It means you look out the window." I don't like that.
Yeah. Exactly. You stay off the screens and
Yeah.
talk to each other. Yeah, and I've heard people talk about it, and one of the previous guests on the show, he was talking about ageism. He was talking about the reverse mentoring and
Yes.
how people that are 20 years younger than him or more, because he's way older than I thought he was, and it was like, huh, I didn't really think about that much, but there is a benefit to that. Like, if you're in your 60s or 50s and you have somebody working with you that's 30, and it's in the same department, same organization, like creating a reverse mentoring program, some kind of mentor program. Like there's so many ways that within a company they can use that as good and help people collaborate better, versus seeing it as a negative when you have
Mhm.
people in all different age groups. But
Absolutely.
um, so what advice would you give if someone came to you and said, we're trying to evaluate the company and how we view HR. What would be maybe some of your advice if, let's say, they are a smaller business, they don't have
Mhm.
internal HR, and there's a lot out there, and we work with a lot
Mhm.
of companies that are smaller. They need good payroll technology,
Yeah.
HR technology, but they don't have the needs for an internal HR.
Right. And it's going to be different in each situation, but my first step is going to be, to ask quite a few questions to get an understanding of, okay, well, first, what caused you to ask me this question? Maybe it's, because I emailed them or I bumped into them at a networking event.
Right.
But there was something that caused them to ask more. So, what is that? Understanding why. I would want to learn a little bit about just kind of their employees in general. What's
Yep.
their tenure? What's their longevity? What are some of the things when that managers, right? Or maybe
Yep.
it's their office manager, maybe it's their controller, the person who does the payroll. What are those types of questions and why are employees seeking you out? Getting a little bit of an understanding of the need.
Yep.
So we offer something called an HR assessment, and it's scalable, of course, based on what your organization's size is. But it really helps us to understand what could you possibly need? What are the most critical, typically if there's a compliance issue, we want to, of course, take care of that first. But what are those things that we can help partner with our clients to get them, aligned and moving, forward from an HR strategy perspective?
Yep.
And, the really nice thing about an HR assessment is that one, it can be just a health check. Sometimes we provide those for organizations that
Yeah.
have fully staffed HR departments and they just want to say, you know what, hey, we are confident, we're comfortable, and we like going to the doctor every year. Did we do our health check to make sure we're running a good ship?
Yep.
Are we also looking outwardly enough to say where could we get some resources that will benefit our employees or culture?
Right.
Sometimes having like a survey done, an engagement survey from a neutral third party
Yep.
can be a lot more valuable than one that's done internally because of what you said earlier, David, like that, just that trust. Like, if I call this EAP, is there some rapport? Truly going to an outside third party can provide that confidence that employees need. Even if they're telling you good things, it's just that nice insurance.
Right.
Um, but you know, the so the HR assessment, it's a good strategy. It's a good health check. For clients that haven't ever had HR, it can be a nice picture of what a jumping off point can look like.
Yep.
So sometimes clients are like, yeah, let's move forward. Let's do it. Others maybe baby step with certain things. Maybe we're just going to start by updating our employee handbook and having the HR Elements team support us in the rollout. And maybe we'll introduce HR Elements to employees that have some questions, and let's see how many you guys get. Are they going to answer them? Maybe then it's some help with our open enrollment, employee relations. So sometimes it's just that as needed. So it can be kind of that project plan,
Yep.
almost even a statement of work.
Yep.
Um, I've had them before be used even to help with an onboarding for a new HR professional where they know we have a need. We need somebody fully here as a team member, but we need somebody to mentor them. And we also have no idea what they should do because this is our first HR person. So our HR strategy from that assessment has served that way. So it's pretty diverse in its
Yeah.
use.
Yeah. And it leads me to the secret code for working with Jamie if you want to contact her, which this is something that you did bring up. So there's a mini HR assessment
Mhm.
and a 30-minute consultation available to people that are listening. So if you are potentially interested in this, all you have to do as part of the Speakeasy HR special is to email Jamie at jbierman@hrelements.com. Use the Speakeasy HR secret code or word partner, and you will get that free assessment and 30-minute consultation. So, like you said, there's people's health that changes, companies' health changes as well. And so that's something that we also, on the technology side, ask people like, hey, when did you last evaluate your technology? How many different technology platforms are you using? Are you adding one every year and you aren't using them because no one wants to roll it out and manage it? So, how many are you wasting money on and not using properly? So, yeah, definitely check the assessment out if you are interested in contacting Jamie with that so that you can really see if some of the services that her team offer could benefit you as a company, whether you have internal HR or not, but definitely something to consider. So, Jamie, I really appreciate your time. Anything else you want to add or anything
No,
else you want to
no,
mention?
thank you. This has been
Okay.
awesome. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
absolutely. Well, thanks for being available to jump on, and the ones that were watching, Will, Warren, appreciate you tuning in. Hopefully, it was helpful for you and broke up your day a little bit. So, if anyone has any other questions, certainly add them, and I can respond after. But this will be on demand on all the different platforms for podcasts. So, Jamie, thanks for your time. Have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.
All righty. Take care.
Bye.